What is up, guys? I'm Vincent, and today I wanted to talk about graduate school and whether or not you should do graduate school. And this is my opinion. Feel free to disagree with it or agree with it or ask me questions. Uh, from my experience, and I'm a firm believer in the Oscar Wilde quote, you can never be too well dressed or overeducated. Going to grad school is never a waste of time. I believe pursuing more education, learning more about any subject is always a great thing. Now, that being said, you do learn while you're in industry, depending on what field you go into. You have a lot of say in what work you do. To give an example, in my current job, I'm working at Berkeley Lights in Emeryville, and I'm doing a lot of on the job training and I'm learning enormous amounts about the immune system and lots of biology, even though my background is in chemical engineering, because you need to know a lot about biology and immunology to support the products that we're selling to our customers. So don't think that committing yourself to industry is somehow going to be preventing you from learning more about a field that you care about. Um, in my case, I'm learning so much immunology all the time because I'm surrounded by people who have masters and PhDs in immunology, and I can ask them tons of questions and spend a lot of time with them whenever I'm not following something that's relevant to our work. And so, um, my take on this is that you really can't go wrong. Whether or not you're going to go back to school or start working, or if you're already in school, if you want to not even work and just go right back into school, it really depends on who you are. It really depends on what you hope to get out of your career. And an important thing to make note of here is that just based on what I've learned about myself, I change as a person over time. I know other people change over time. Your current goals, values, interests might not be the same. And so committing to a PhD is committing 5 years of your life into immunology, for instance. And it might not be a field that you really care as passionately about in 5 years' time. And you might burn out and, uh, but you still run the same risk of if you go work for 5 years and you're like, I hate this work. I wish I got that PhD in immunology. That sucks too. The important thing to make a note of that is essential to keeping your mental health through all this is knowing that whatever mistakes you may feel like you've made, just know that you've learned a lot along the way and you're now a more rounded and experienced person as a result. Even if I don't end up doing this job, even if I end up doing marketing or sales or something completely different from my background in chemical engineering, uh, I still bring with me all of the stuff that I've learned along the way as a chemical engineer in whatever work I'm doing right now. So it is never a bad thing to have too much education. That being said, you do have to take into account the fact that your income will be less, and this is just a fact of life. You will be like making less money if you decide to do a PhD instead of go right into work. That being said, it's so complicated because it depends on what field your PhD is in. Um, in my current line of work, I'm working with a lot of people who are also chemical engineers who have PhDs or masters in chemical engineering. And with this, I feel like if you were this confident that you would commit 5 years of your life to studying chemical engineering, you could have also committed those same 5 years of your life to working and getting industry specific experience to be a more valuable chemical engineer. Now, if you really don't know what you want to do, getting a PhD is arguably across the board the best thing to do that will give you more marketable skills in general as a person because getting the PhD is going to be really hard or a master's. It's going to require you get a lot better and improve your ability to critically read publications, perhaps writing grants and being able to ask for money. You might have to manage teams and work with undergrads and PIs, and you'll get a lot of interpersonal skills. So beyond whatever the explicit topic your PhD is in, like biology or immunology, you're going to be getting a lot of other skills along the way that are very marketable and valuable to employers. So don't ever think of a PhD as necessarily a waste in time or money, because even if you don't end up getting the PhD, you can still talk about all the skills you developed along the way that will make you a more competitive applicant and a stronger professional. So none of this is a mistake. That is the key thing to take home here. Don't start beating yourself up, because that's when you start to lose confidence in yourself, and that's when employers will sense that maybe you're not someone that they would want on their team. If, let's say, you do stop a PhD or a master's program, the key things that I would hit home to an employer who was asking me, well, why didn't you finish this program? I would be saying things along the lines of, I found that I had interests in other fields, and I believed that my time could best be spent pursuing these paths. And I'm keeping it pretty generic right now because I don't know your specifics if you're one of those people, or if you're debating whether or not you should do a PhD. Just know that you will need to decide at the end of the day what path you want to take. And you can always change paths. Like if you go the PhD route, you can always jump back and work in professional world too. Um, just know that as a PhD, you will be working insane hours. I know that a lot of the people I know who are getting PhDs or who've gotten their PhDs spend easily 100 hours every week in lab. And so you better love what you're doing. You better be really passionate about biology or immunology, and there has to be some question in your mind that you really want to answer. And you have to be very scientific. You have to be very good at keeping up with literature and following others' arguments and debating other people and compromising. And so, as an employer, when I see people with PhDs, I know that these are people who they're very well versed in this stuff. So 5 years in PhD land, I would say very translates very well or equivalently to 5 years in industry, because you are developing many similar skill sets. So don't let the idea that you'll have no marketable skills detract from your ambitions to get a PhD. Also, getting the PhD route, you will be doing groundbreaking research, hopefully, in some field that you care a lot about. If that's immunology, that would be fantastic to be, one of the researchers who helps discover new receptors on T cells or B cells, that helps new uh, oncologists develop more effective cancer therapies. And even though it might not be you as the explicit single author on the paper that your team publishes, just knowing intrinsically, or just knowing that you were on the team that helped push the science forward, for me would be pretty intrinsically motivating. So there's a lot of things to take into account. I will say again, you can never be, just like Oscar Wilde said, you can never be too well educated. And so edu- education is not a bad thing. And of course, you do have to weigh other things into account, like how valuable is money to you? How much do you need money, and do you despise the lifestyle of being in academia? Because you are going to make sacrifices being in academia. You're going to be working very long hours. You're not going to be making as much money. You get stipends. Usually they're like a couple grand every month. So, in the Bay Area where I live, you're going to have a hard time to just live um, on that kind of money, especially at UC Berkeley. And also, if you're someone who absolutely hates teaching, I know at UC Berkeley they kind of force you to teach. So a lot of people who've gotten PhDs go to other universities like UCSF, where there's no undergrads there that you have to worry about managing. So you can really kind of focus exclusively on research if you're one of those people who just really wants to be away from undergrads and teaching, and you just want to be focused entirely on learning more about uh, research interest of yours. So yeah, that is kind of my take on this whole thing. Is you really can't go wrong. You can't be too well educated, and it's life is what you make it. So if you start a PhD program and you hate it, and you just every day is just terrible for you, and you don't put effort into it because you're just depressed, like, yeah, your PhD isn't going to be great, and it's going to be really hard to talk to people about what you got from the program. But at the same time, if you view even your mistakes in good light, which is you got really good at reading publications, you got really good at thinking critically on a higher level and working on teams, you got really good at debating people and thinking about incredibly complex topics and thinking about new ways to solve these challenging problems. Even if you didn't get a PhD at the end of the day, you will still have a very strong voice, and you will look as an exception. You'll be an exceptional candidate in these job interviews. So, um, this is the work and the professional life and school. It's all kind of one thing at the end of the day, too. So don't think of these as different. They are very much the same. They are very much you becoming a stronger, more well rounded person. And also, people work for a few years and then they go back and get their PhD programs. So these two paths that we think of as independent, they cross quite often. And I will say, a lot of people who I know who have done PhD or master's programs, they are pretty happy to go back and work because the lifestyle is a lot more comfortable, I want to say, unless you're someone who likes pain. um, I might be one of those people. But, yeah, this is my take on it. Feel free to chime in with questions or other things. My background is I do not have a PhD or a master's. I got my bachelor's degree. I started working. I've been working full time since I graduated. I took some more classes on my junior college while I was a full time worker, and that was just because I have academic interests and I wanted to learn more stuff. But you can still do school. You can still do both. It'll be challenging, of course. Life is challenging. But yeah, I hope this helps shed some light. And you know, just thank you for watching, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks, guys.